2008 was a great year for video games. The Nintendo Wii was a money-printing machine, the PlayStation 3 was starting to come into its own after a sluggish start, and the Xbox 360 would maintain momentum after its strong launch 3 years prior. Despite this, I feel like video game design was sort of at a low point. It seemed like every other game being released was a first or third person shooter, with brown being the primary color of choice by art directors. However, in August of 2008, Game Informer announced a new game that would blend familiar concepts, familiar characters, and familiar voices with what felt like a wholly original experience: Batman: Arkham Asylum. Before Arkham Asylum, the world's greatest detective had a starring role in many video games, perhaps most notably the 1989 NES tie-in that coincided with the release of the Tim Burton film, simply titled Batman the Video Game. Tie-ins with movies and television shows would be a consistent trend with Batman video games moving forward, with Batman Returns, The Adventures of Batman and Robin, Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, and Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker, along with a smattering of original games sprinkled in between. Christopher Nolan's ridiculously successful Batman Begins would hit movie theaters on June 15, 2005, and a tie-in video game developed by Eurocom and co-published by Electronic Arts and Warner Bros. Interactive would release to much less praise and fanfare the same day. Just over a year later, Eidos Interactive would announce that they had acquired the Batman license. The September 2008 issue of Game Informer, which had been revealed the month prior, featured a cover story announcing Arkham Asylum, with covers of both the Joker and Batman, drawn by comic book artist Carlos D'Anda, who would play a huge role in the game's design, and whom we'll talk a little bit more about later on. I still remember this Joker cover of Game Informer like I picked it up this morning. Inside these pages was a detailed, hands-on preview of the game, along with comments from both the game's director, Sefton Hill, and one of his producers, Matt O'Driscoll. During this time, the world was enthralled with Nolan's films, with Batman Begins and The Dark Knight considered two landmark films not only in the Batman mythos, but in cinema history as a whole. When word got out that a new Batman video game was coming in 2009, most people assumed it was some kind of late tie-in to The Dark Knight. Even after the Game Informer issue dropped, people were looking past Arkham Asylum thinking it was a movie-based game, despite the fact that the screenshots clearly showed this was not Christian Bale's Batman or Heath Ledger's Joker. The first page of the article even says the game has no ties to any other media project, and producer Matt O'Driscoll says, "The license is great. It allows us to do our own story, our own vision of the characters. Obviously these all have to go through an approval process with Warner, but they're not like, this is a movie license, it's got to be exactly this way." This is how ingrained the Batman license was with movie tie-in video games, to the point that a new publisher of this new game had to go out of their way to tell everyone that it's not a movie-based game. And it still seemed like no one listened, because I remember a lot of people back then saying they weren't going to play this game because it's a movie game, and movie games suck. This leads us back to Carlos D'Anda. In addition to the artwork for Game Informer, D'Anda would also illustrate the Arkham Asylum prequel comic book that was written by Warner Bros. Animation producer Alan Burnett, and was also the character concept artist for the game. All the unlockable character bios in Arkham Asylum were also accompanied by D'Anda's amazing work. While talking about the character designs for the game, D'Anda said, "Batman was very difficult. The hard part was straddling that fine line between a guy that looks like the Batman that we all know, without going into the Batman that we know now in the movies. My favorite character to reimagine was probably the Joker. Such a cool character that you can't help but just want to draw the guy. Hopefully the players will be able to buy into the reality of the characters I designed for the game. The fans' reaction I thought was really the most rewarding thing. It makes me very, very happy." In this same article, it was announced that Rocksteady Studios would be handling the development of the game. The studio co-founded by the game's director, Sefton Hill. Rocksteady had a proven track record going into the project with a total of, wait, let me just check my notes here. Oh yes, one game to their credit before being handed the keys to Gotham City. Urban Chaos: Riot Response was released on the PlayStation 2 during the summer of 2006, and at the time of Arkham City's release was the only game Rocksteady Studios had ever made. Urban Chaos had actually begun development at Argonaut Games, which developed the Super Effects chip for the SNES, along with the first game utilizing the new hardware, Star Fox. However, Argonaut would be liquidated in 2005, so publisher Eidos shifted development over to Rocksteady, which had just received an influx of now former Argonaut employees. Real quick on Urban Chaos, this game is not good. It's a pretty bland FPS where the novelty is that you're a cop on a zero-tolerance SWAT team in a city overrun with crime. Kinda like the opening of Demolition Man. The FMV sequences are all real actors reminding me of a Sega CD game. Can't say I recommend it. If you've ever played Urban Chaos or had heard of Rocksteady Studios before the Batman Arkham games, you're a fucking liar. I've never heard a single person ever talk about Urban Chaos in my life, nor did anyone know who Rocksteady Studios was. I feel these two things also helped short sell the game during these early announcements. No one knew where this game was coming from. Speaking of Urban Chaos one last time, Arkham Asylum director Septon Hill briefly commented on the game in an October 2009 interview with Gamasutra, saying, "We started the company in December of 2004 and started working on Urban Chaos for PS2 and Xbox. That project took just over a year, and after we finished that, we started to work on a number of different prototypes using Unreal Engine 3 for a next-gen game on 360 and PS3. That was the first time we'd used Unreal, and we worked on that for about a year." Hill would continue, describing the studio's transition from playing around with the prototype to being involved with the Batman license, saying, "Eidos acquired the Batman license because of the deal they had with Warner, and they came to us because they liked the prototype we were working on. They felt that it looked great and played great, and asked if we could bring some of that attention to detail to Batman. They basically approached us and said, well, what would you do with Batman? And to come up with ideas for the project. We did a presentation for them, which Eidos looked at and really liked, and that was how it all started." While Septon Hill and his team at Rocksteady worked on the game, Eidos and DC Comics brought Paul Dini onto the project to pen the game's story. Dini was no stranger to The Dark Knight, being the head writer of Batman the Animated Series and the new Batman Adventures, along with Superman the Animated Series and several Batman comic books. Once it was revealed that Dini would be heading up the story, most fans started to assume, correctly in this case, that Kevin Conroy, Mark Hamill, and Arlene Sorkin would reprise their roles of Batman, the Joker, and Harley Quinn respectively. This was hinted at in the original Game Informer article, but it was still being kept under wraps at the time. When speaking to Comic Book Resource in April 2009, Dini revealed that the story of Arkham Asylum was being pulled from several different versions of the Batman mythos, but that basically everyone on the design team was set on having the graphic novel Arkham Asylum, a serious house on Serious Earth, as the main influence of the game's story and visuals. Written by Grant Morrison and illustrated by Dave McKean, Serious House on Serious Earth was released in October of 1989 and was an immediate success. The book is very much an origin story of the Asylum and told through the journals of its founder, Amadeus Arkham. The story element is featured heavily in the game as players can find various tomes known as the Spirit of Arkham, which details the founding of the Asylum as told by Amadeus. Amadeus' story in the game reflects the one in the book almost one-to-one. The Asylum's design in the game is also heavily influenced by Serious House on Serious Earth, featuring Gothic architecture throughout and in some areas a beetle motif, paying homage to a major event in the book. Another book featuring the Asylum as its primary setting will provide the game with one of its supporting characters, Aaron Cash, who is lifted directly from the book Arkham Asylum: Living Hell, written by Dan Slott and penciled by Ryan Sook, published in 2003. If you've ever read Serious House on Serious Earth, you can definitely point out some similarities between Arkham Asylum the game and Arkham Asylum the book, both from a story standpoint and a visual standpoint. However, the game is very toned down in comparison. As release date for Arkham Asylum approached, media coverage seemed to die down. Outside of that world premiere in Game Informer, there didn't seem to be a whole lot of buzz around the game that I can remember, either from the media or the target audience for the game. In the same Gamasutra interview, Septon Hill commented on this, saying, "I think it's a fine line. You want people to be as excited as possible about the game you're making, and superhero games had a tendency to not live up to expectations in the past, so I think there was naturally some skepticism." I was definitely in this camp. Even being a Batman fan, I wasn't excited. I was part of the echo chamber saying, "Oh, it's a Batman game. Batman games are bad. Oh, the studio's never made anything. They can't be trusted. Oh, it's Eidos. They're small fry." That's when Eidos and Rocksteady played their trump card. A playable demo released on Xbox Live Arcade and PlayStation Store on August 6, 2009, only 19 days before the game's release. I played this demo, then I played it again, and again, and again, and again. This demo caused me to pull a complete 180. I was all in after that. Public opinion seemed to change after this as well. If any video game publishers out there are watching, take this to heart. A good demo sells games. The Final Fantasy VII Remake demo did the exact same thing for me a decade later, turning me from skeptic to pre-order purchaser. If you have confidence in your game, put out a demo and start stacking paper. On August 25th, 2009, Batman Arkham Asylum was released for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, and I was a day one buyer. After that big Game Informer reveal, the ho-hum coverage leading up to the release, and that 11th hour demo, how did the game turn out? This game fucking rocks. Seriously, I don't think anyone was expecting Arkham Asylum to blow away expectations this hard, receiving near universal acclaim. As you can imagine, the game takes place in the titular Arkham Asylum mental institution and prison. The Joker has covertly set up a takeover of the asylum in order to obtain a drug he had been secretly funding and developing with the aid of an asylum doctor, along with trapping Batman on the island with some of his greatest foes, seemingly just for fun. Arkham Asylum features a combat system known as Free Flow Combat, which was designed to feel not only unique, but simple for the player to execute. Director Sefton Hill would say about the combat, Batman is a highly trained martial artist. He can take these guys out no problem, so we really wanted the player to feel that power. This results in a combat system that lets the player take on 10 or more assailants at a time and finish the encounter without taking a single hit. The variety of moves and enemy types is where the real challenge is, knowing when to use a counter, when to cape stun, when to evade, and when to incorporate gadgets into your combo, managing the danger within the room in a way only Batman can. The combat also does not reward button mashing, which I remember some people complaining about at the time of release. Just mashing the strike button won't get you far here. After the third hit of a combo is when you enter free flow, which is all about timing and getting into a rhythm with your attacks. Timing the button press as the attack lands deals extra damage and increases your combo count by 2 rather than by 1, which gives you access to more powerful moves. Most notably the combo takedown, an instant knockout move that can only be done once per 8 hits, or 5 with an upgrade. The vast variety of animations on Batman makes every encounter feel different. It always seems like you're seeing him do moves you haven't seen before. Outside of combat, you'll encounter situations requiring a stealthy approach to be taken rather than just throwing hands, most notably rooms full of thugs with firearms. Moving from point to point with the grapnel gun, using the environment, gadgets, and old-fashioned crouch walking are key, along with using Batman's detective vision. Detective vision is like the video game version of Batman's detective skills and intuition, highlighting objects in the environment that can be interacted with, identifying more dangerous inmates, and being used to track targets across the island. Clearing out an entire room through strength or stealth makes you feel badass. I think that's one of the most important things any action game must do, make the player feel like a badass. As you progress through the game, you'll begin to have access to more and more gadgets and add them to your repertoire. From specialized batarangs to the also fun explosive gel and the code-cracking cryptographic sequencer. All these items are mapped to the D-pad, and this is another thing that makes you feel like Batman. The world's greatest detective knows exactly where everything is in his utility belt, and memorizing what items are mapped where on the D-pad reflects this. You'll eventually notice yourself switching to items even without thinking about it. I don't know if that was the intention or not, but that's how I've always seen it. As you make your way through the Arkham facility, you'll notice places and things you cannot access. However, once your inventory starts to expand, you'll have those aha moments, remembering that grate you couldn't reach before, or that wall you couldn't knock down, allowing you to access more parts of the island. This makes the game feel like Castlevania, Metroid, or even Legend of Zelda. Sefton Hill openly admits that the Nintendo franchises had a big influence on Arkham Asylum, saying, "I'm a big fan of Zelda and Metroid games, going back for years. They were definitely big influences. I like that sort of approach to design, giving you a number of different gadgets and abilities that you can use and combine in different ways. The feeling of being in this complete other world. Those games were definitely a big influence."
Yes, it is I, Edward Nigma, the Riddler, and more importantly, your intellectual superior.
Of course, I can't go without mentioning the Riddler, the man behind the game's various puzzles. Somehow, Edward Nigma had time to hide dozens upon dozens of trophies all over Arkham Island, and he tasks you with retrieving them along with solving environmental puzzles and riddles along the way to unlock character bios, challenge rooms, and character trophies. The Riddler challenges are a bit overboard in the game, as there are a ton of them, and the number only increase with each entry in the series. This is the Arkham series staple that people either love or hate. And who can forget the Scarecrow sections of the game? They're not scary, but seeing the halls of Arkham Asylum slowly change into Crime Alley, or a door you just went through taking you to an even more nightmarish version of the asylum was mind-bending at the time. And I guess it still is mind-bending now, as the Sony Spider-Man games would straight up steal these sections. The only thing I can really knock the game for are its boss battles, which honestly kinda suck. Most of them are just a big bad surrounded by henchmen. I think Poison Ivy is hands down the best boss in the game, as her battle feels like something out of Legend of Zelda. Maybe that's what Sefton Hill intended. But that's giving it too much credit. Thankfully, this area of the game would improve as the series progressed. Arkham Asylum went on to sell an estimated 9.5 million units since its release 15 years ago. Holy shit. Oh, I almost gave myself a heart attack there. 15 years? Oh, hang on. I gotta call somebody, dude. Yeah, hello. Do you realize that Batman Arkham Asylum came out 15 years ago? Yeah, I know. We're fucking old now. If you still haven't played this masterpiece, I highly recommend that you do. You can pick up an original Xbox 360 or PS3 copy, but the game is widely available across multiple platforms, is usually bundled with other entries in the series, and is dirt cheap. The game is available digitally on Steam, GOG, PlayStation Store, Xbox Marketplace, and Nintendo eShop. The physical version was also released on the PS4 and Xbox One bundled with its sequel, Arkham City, known as Batman Return to Arkham, which of course is playable on both the PS5 and Xbox Series X. And that's going to do it for this one. As always, thank you for watching. I'm RedCometXIII, and I'll see you next time.
The fans really seem to enjoy that. You made it look easy.